the audience told me that they're very much looking forward to this discussion with you. And they particularly said they would not so much like to hear about your business. They would much more like to hear about you as a person, what it meant for you. Because for each one of us in this room, we all want to be a unicorn. We want to be like you. Maybe. So I have several questions. And the first question I would like to start off with for both of you is, when you became a unicorn, what changed? What changed in terms of the challenge, or what were the pleasant surprises? Particularly for you as a leader of your business. Who wants to go first?
Well, first thing first, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's not like before we were not unicorn and then suddenly we were unicorns. Yes, there was a sign, meaning the investors give you checks that stated, okay, that means the valuation of the company is over $1 billion, then now we become unicorn. But again, it doesn't happen overnight, right? So the changes happen to be more like a slow changes over time, where initially when we started back then, there was only like 5 people, where we obviously know everyone. We obviously know what they are doing. Now we have like thousands of people. I might not even know some of them. Maybe if I, just meet them here or maybe in other places, maybe they sometimes I don't recognize. So that is one. But the second thing, maybe more important, is that I feel that more and more as the company grow over time, the risk and returns is also growing over time. Meaning that right now the impact is just greater, both in terms of the success, but also in terms of the failures. Back then when we were small, the failure of experiment, maybe people don't really care. But right now, Bukalapak maybe having error for like 15 minutes or something, people will start flooding our Twitter or Instagram, right? Because that's just shows that the company is itself have a lot of people who actually use our company in a day-to-day basis, or even in an hour-to-hour basis, or even minute-to-minute basis. In a real time, I think it is common for Bukalapak application to have hundreds of thousands traffic in parallel in a real time. So meaning that you have a big responsibility as a leaders. It's something that, again, over time, you probably didn't realize, but then you started to realize when you talk to employees, when you hear them saying some things like, I'm here because I believe about the vision of the company. And the first time I heard that, I was like, wow, really? And then it was like, but then I realized there is some responsibility into whatever I talk, whatever I say, whatever I do. So here and here, I try to give a positive examples to walk the talk, whatever I talk, including whatever I'm talking here. And hopefully that can inspire people, not just inside the company, but also everyone who interact with the company.
Thank you very much. Jason, before you, could I go one level deeper? Because you were talking a little about the risks are getting bigger. You're talking about people really believing your dream. Could you share a little bit what that meant for you as a person, in way of how that changed you, or how maybe not changed you? Anything you might want to share with the audience?
I think definitely there is something that I feel that, look, as the company grow bigger and bigger from seed rounds, the valuation maybe like a few $100K, now it becomes unicorns, now more than $1 billion. Then the question that I keep thinking or asking myself over and over again is, am I also growing thousands times as a person?
Oh, wow, yes.
Right? Because if the company grows 2 times, 3 times every year, then isn't it a must for myself to also grow 2 or 3 times better?
How do you deal with that? Probably comes at 2 o'clock at night or something. How
now,
do you deal
the
with
thing is, you don't have in the exact measure that you as a person is actually 2 times better than you were a year ago, right? But you can only try to achieve better. Whether you are 2 or 3 times, maybe there's no one can answer that. There is no quantitative one, but for sure, you always want to be better. because again, it's like your responsibility that you have to, otherwise you cannot catch up with the company, right? It's like common sense that maybe I'm not built, and that is also the reason why probably some founders also at some point of time decided to step down, right? As a CEO, maybe, okay, you know what, like Google, for example, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, at one point of time, they stepped down as a CEO, they hire Eric Schmidt, and then Uber, and then Zuckerberg, maybe something in between at the moment.
Did you ever, before you became a unicorn, ask yourself, should I step down as a CEO? Am I still the right CEO for the business?
That is, again, the question that not easy to answer, but I guess ultimately...
I just asked if you ever asked yourself the question.
Yeah. Obviously, that's something that I myself and maybe Zaki as my partner also sometimes asking. Because, again, the company grows, the question still remains that, are we still good enough to lead the company day to day, or maybe we should learn something first before we are able to lead this company this big, for example.
Thank you for sharing. Jason, a little bit to you. How do you broadly think about this question of how things changed when you became the unicorn?
So I think we were quite unique in that, first of all, Widhiyasa announced us as a unicorn. So for a minister to acknowledge us through our market share, our position, was quite unique. And I talked at length at one of our internal events, our Over Nation event with Rudi, and listened to him talk about Indonesia. You know, I've only been in Southeast Asia 3 years, in Indonesia 2 years.
So we should welcome him. Give him an applause. Welcome in Southeast Asia. Probably the best move you ever made.
I absolutely love Southeast Asia. I'll come on to Indonesia in a moment. So
yeah, please, we want to hear that.
And so Widhiyasa, the first thing is there's a lot of unicorns in Indonesia. You know, let's not remember there aren't 5 unicorns in Indonesia. There are thousands of unicorns in Indonesia, but there's a new breed of unicorns that are responsible for this financial literacy and financial inclusion acceleration. You know, Pa William from Tokopedia, he talks about his impact to the environment. Bukalapak, we've worked with them through Kudo when I was in Grab. You know, all of these amazing ecosystem builders are accelerating financial inclusion. So I think that's what's different. You know, it's a different type of unicorn that we're building today.
And what does it mean for you as a person?
So I think when this happened, there's 3 things that happened to me. And, you know, I've worked for large organizations, so I'm used to big organizations, etc. But this was really a milestone for me. The first thing was there was this overwhelming privilege that I'm a British guy. I moved to Asia for experience, and I found my way into Jakarta. And Indonesia is now the center of fintech globally. And I don't think you guys...
Could you say that one more time?
Indonesia is the center of fintech globally.
Give it a hand. Thank you for saying that.
But let me please explain why. That if you look what's happened in China, you know, if you bench where Indonesia is today with our DAU in electronic money, our penetration of e-commerce, we're China 2008, 2009. But Indonesia will not take 10 or 11 years. 2 to 3 years, this country will be there. It's an amazing country. The speed, the learning, the acceptance of individuals, and so many young entrepreneurs in one country, it's incredible. And so I think first thing that hit me was the privilege that as a British guy, I get to participate in your country's future. And I don't think that should be taken lightly. Since being in Indonesia, I adore Indonesia. My team will tell you. I love the people. I think the people of Indonesia are warm, they're welcome. I love the values, the family, the food. You know, it's very, you can fall in love with Indonesia very easy. And so I feel responsible when I'm not in Indonesia. I always talk about Indonesia and talk about what a great place it is. So I think we've got to build our brand as a country. But I think right now, everyone around the world wants to be in Indonesia. Remember, it used to be Brazil, Russia, India, China, the BRIC economy. Everybody has to have a strategy for Indonesia now. That's how important this country is. So that privilege was the first thing, that I'm very privileged to be here and not to take this lightly. The second thing was a massive concern. when we look at the metrics today, all of the work that we've done over the X number of years that, Panadim and Pandre, GoPay have done, ourselves, Linkaja, Dana, everybody, our penetration, all that competition is 2.3%. So there's 97.7% of the nation we've not impacted. So the next thing was this overwhelming concern. And it's not just payments. You think of families that don't have the ability to lend, borrow in the most important times for education, for food, for medical care. You look at that quantum of underserving, and it puts a lot of pressure on you. So then the next thing that happened to me was this renewed energy. How do I need to change the organization? How do we need to grow up? How do I need to improve my leadership quality? How do we need to improve culture? How do we need to improve processes?
Can I ask, as a leader, where did you get the energy from to do that?
I think my team will tell you that's not something I have a shortage of. So I think energy, if you love something as much as I love OVO, I think you probably feel the same. Even on the darkest day, you just have a ton of energy. You wake up, you want to get to work, and you want to change the world. It just gives you a different energy. And if I look for energy, my favorite team to go and see in my office is the collections team. They have the toughest job, and they always they walk in, they're like, "Samampa, hey," and they want to photograph, they want to hug, they want to tell you about their day. And I walk out that room with just a load more energy than I walked in. Indonesian people will share their energy and love with you any day.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. If we now look at your businesses, and for you it was very fast, in 3 years, for you a little bit longer. What separated you at what point in time that you became the Bukalapak, that you became the OVO in the journey of the company? And the second one I'll ask, in your personal journey, made you know that this is what we will become?
I think for Bukalapak, it was something that potentially some of you here, especially if you have started a startup, may or may not experience. We started Bukalapak back in 2010, January 2010. It was started because at the time we just graduated from ITB, having a computer science background. We thought that when we want to develop something, develop a business, we thought that why don't we develop an IT business? And what kind of IT business? We thought that, look, e-commerce seems to be a good thing. Why don't we create an e-commerce? But then we thought maybe we need to adjust or tailor the e-commerce into the Indonesian market situation, where in Indonesia, small, medium businesses is the one that is ruling the country. Indonesian economy, 60% of it is contributed by the SMEs. So we thought, can we develop something, the e-commerce, which is tailored to help Indonesian SMEs? So that is the hypothesis. So we created an e-commerce marketplace. It's not an online retail, where we develop a platform where everyone, including especially the SMEs, can sell the goods in the platform. Again, that's an hypothesis. We tried to develop Bukalapak, we launched it, and then it somewhat grew, but not so much, to the point that it didn't make money at the time. So it's not like financially success at the time, but we still believe that it is actually something that we want to pursue. So we keep Bukalapak, but
sorry, if I may interrupt you. In that moment, it's not making money.
Yeah.
People are telling you the business model isn't working.
Yeah.
Could you share, because all of us in starting small businesses, we have been there, we are there, we will be there. Could you expand what gave you that you could continue? Why didn't you rationally, with your good ITB education, close the shop and become something else? What gave you the energy to push through?
Three of us, three co-founders of Bukalapak, are coming from humble background as well. So I, for example, my family was come from Karawang, from West Java, but then I grew in Pekalongan, Central Java. Zaki was from Sragen. So again, we still believe that this is actually something that we need, because we see the problem there. If you are an SMEs, the way you can grow the business is very, very limited, because you can only sell to your neighborhood. And we think that if we create an online system, we can actually help SMEs, because now suddenly they can achieve or they can reach the whole Indonesian market. That is, again, the hypothesis. And we also tried to pitch like just now, to pitch our startup to investors. But at the time, there was no unicorn term. There was no even startup term. There was no VC community and so on. So we only reached out to some, high net worth individuals that we know. And none of them actually wanted to invest in Bukalapak. There was only one person who wanted to invest, but with 80% shares. So this person asked for 80% shares. We said, no, that's not what we want. So we continue doing Bukalapak, but at the same time, we are also doing a lot of other side projects to fund the company, like creating websites for clients and something like that. And maybe some people here are doing that. But then we try to, okay, that is the hypothesis, but can we look for ways to test this in the smaller context? And perhaps this is something that a lot of people can do as well. We try to find a niche market where we think that it can be tested. And it happened to be one of our early success of Bukalapak is stepping into this bicycle category community. So if you are into bicycle, you have a community. At the time, there was like bike to work, bike to campus, and so on. The activities that you do in the community, one is obviously to cycle together, but two is actually to buy and sell bicycle parts. Maybe you change the whatever part or helmet or whatever, and you do that in an online marketplace. So that has become our first niche, and we see an initial traction of the growth of Bukalapak.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. To you, what do you see in the back? When was that turning point?
So I think, first of all, I'm not a startup guy in the same way, and I have a huge amount of respect for people like you in the audience and for yourself, where you take that brave movement and you put yourself on the line. It's something I've never done. So, I came into a business that was a 0 to 1, and my job was 1 to 100. And that's very different. So I haven't had to overcome some of the obstacles of, hand-to-mouth funding, which is really tough. And so I have a huge amount of respect for the people that do that. My job was really to look at, first of all, so I do treat OVO as my own. I care for the company. It's my company. It's my job. I love what I do. I love serving the people of the company. It's, OVO has become my life very quickly. So I can't imagine, I don't know how you feel, I can't imagine it.
Let me then rephrase the question. What in your background, maybe going back all the way to your childhood, helped you that you are now leading this in this way? So
there's two moments in my life that I reflect on a lot. The first of all is, God bless her, my mother passed away, but she's always been my mentor. So as a child, I did have a difficult childhood, so I was actually brought up outside my family. And then after a while, so I was in care, and then I was returned to my mother when I was around 11 or 12. So I've certainly not had a silver spoon childhood. And my mother opened her own business, and she run the business herself. And every night we would do the books. So this was a petrol station. And every night we would count the gallons, the liters of fuel, the food we sold, and everything else. And we would do the books from the top left to the bottom right on a red line piece of paper. And my mother gave me 3 pieces of advice in life. This is very much in the UK context. She said, it's the pennies, not the pounds. So look after the small, and the big will look after itself. Her next piece of advice is business is built on relationships and trust, not contracts. She always believed if you had to refer to a piece of paper, the relationship was already broken. And her third saying I used to love, which is, that there's no cost for manners. So she always used to say, it doesn't matter what situation you're in, how tough, you are always polite. You always say please, and you always say thank you, and you always have gratitude. So she brought me up to really value things and not, material things don't really mean a lot to me. So she's really my grounding. And to be honest with you, my team will tell you that, when I go to Money 2020 and these things, and there's 5,000 or 6,000 people in the audience, I clear all the audience. And the only person I present to is my mum. And it's because I know she wants me to do well, and I want to do my best for her. So in my life, my mother is iconic. She's still my mentor. The second thing is I worked for a company called Microsoft, and at the time it was going through a really tough time I think our CEO at the time was probably not the best CEO for the business in Mr. Ballmer. Huge respect for him, but it was a tough time for Microsoft, and we lost our strategy. And I started working for a guy called Jeremy Dale. He's just written a book, if you want to read it. It's called Punk Rock Business.
What's it called?
Punk Rock Business.
Punk Rock Business. Oh, that's
Great
a nice
book.
title.
And Jeremy came into the business in Microsoft, really tough times, energy was low. And I went into my first European leadership meeting with him, and he said, okay, I've got an idea. We're going to treble the profitability of the business in 1,000 days. And I looked at this guy, and let's remember, just in one country, we were delivering $1 billion of profit, just in one. And this was the whole of Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. And he said, and I was just like, this guy is balmy. I love it. And so we built a plan. We literally built a plan. And the truth of the matter is, we did it in under 1,000 days. And so when I look at OVO now, I'm talking to the business, what we've done in 2 years, how do we do that in a year? How do we do that in 6 months? And I think the critical moments, you asked me what the critical moments were. There's 2 things that OVO have done that have disrupted our future. Payments before OVO. So if you look at the statistics from Bank of Indonesia, e-payments grew 200% in the last 12 months, and 90% of that was from e-money, and I'm assuming a large proportion was from OVO. So what did we do differently?
Yes, what did you do?
First of all, if you look, there was some certain infrastructure problems in Indonesia. The payments infrastructure is really poor. So the first thing we did was create payments as a service and embed OVO in Tokopedia and in Grab, which meant as long as you have one of those 3 applications, you have the ability to pay. You have the ability to register. You have the ability to top up. So today, we can reach 115 million people. It just changes the dynamic. It changes the dynamic of connectivity, of infrastructure, of memory capacity, and of selling a new application. So it was a game changer. The other thing that I don't believe in, and I think Bukalapak is very similar, it's not a walled garden. It's an open ecosystem. We have no exclusives. We don't want any. We want to serve everybody. So whether it's Tokopedia, Lazada, Bukalapak, we don't care. We just want our customers to buy what they want, where they want, how they want. We're really keen that we work with P2P lenders for dispersal and collection. If I look at Alibaba and I take Yourbao as our example, Alibaba is now 10% of money market funds in China, but they are the biggest money market fund in the world. What they did is impact the other 90%, and they accelerated China. If we get 10%, I'm good. If we can help the country accelerate that and drive financial inclusion, then it's worth doing. One last thing I'd like to see us all stop fighting each other.
Stop fighting each other?
I think the competition has got to stop focusing on the competition. The industry has to grow up. We have got a 97% problem. I look at it and I think we all need to focus on the 97% as an industry.
Well, me as a consumer, I like you fight. I'm going to wait for a 70% discount. 30% is already normal. If I tell my European friends there's a 10% discount, they look, where are you living? I said 10%. No, I don't do that. I only do 30. So.
You're so selfish. No, I genuinely, I think we've got to compete for the customer. I think that's right. But I think we've got to work as an industry now. But that's because we've worked so hard and we've got to this new point in time. And I think as an industry, I love what Bank of Indonesia's done with QRIS. I think, when we look at China and we look at the way Ojekar and BEI is working to improve regulation, I think the whole of Indonesia is working together to accelerate. And I think we deserve to be the center of the fintech world. But we shouldn't underestimate our role, our responsibility, and our privilege.
Wow, thank you. Let's give both of them a hand. I mean, I've been grilling them a little bit. So we should encourage them to share more. I would slowly want to look to the future. And you're now unicorns, you're famous, you're in the spotlight, you're growing successfully. Let's first tip on the business, but then I really want to come more to the private side. Over the next, and you pick it, if it's 6 months or 24 months, what's the big, juicy opportunity that you see out there, even if it's daring, on the business? I'll get to the personal side, which we really want to hear, but to just tee it up, just a short comment, what would that be?
So I think Jason mentioned about the 97%. I guess that's about the share of payment that is still done offline, right? And it's a bit similar in the e-commerce market, where e-commerce is growing fast, about double every year, but the e-commerce as a percentage of total retail in Indonesia is only about 5%. So 95% is still done in offline. So 95% and then 97%. And it seems that if you are just focusing on the online, then we are fighting only for the 5%. So we think it's better to focus on the 100%, right? So not just the 5%. And I agree that maybe we should change our terms from fighting each other into compete each other's, into like, because fighting is about, there is a winner and there is a losers. I recently started running. It seems like running a marathon is a better terms, where it's a very, very long game, right? If you just sprint for like 100 meters, you want to do as fast as you can. But if you're running for marathon, haven't done it, but I assume you need to maintain your stamina, you need to conserve the energy and so on, so that you're able to finish at a reasonable time and still do it with the happy faces, right? So I think from that point, what Bukalapak has done, and will continue doing that, is to try to shift our focus into from only focusing on the online part into focusing all about the 100%. In 1 or 2 years ago, we started this initiative called Mitra Bukalapak, where we partner with the offline one, with the offline stores, with warung, with the kokolontong, where we get them into become our partners. We have now secured 1 million of these warungs.
1 million.
1 million of these
Give
warungs.
him a hand. That's good. That's a start.
And on top of that, we also have another 1.5 million of individuals working as a Mitra Bukalapak. So in total, we have 2.5 million of Mitra Bukalapak.
So the juicy target would be 20 million in 18 months?
The juicy target is about the 95% of the total retail, meaning that we are expanding our vision. I mentioned initially that the vision of Bukalapak back then in 2010 was to help empower SMEs through online. Now when we are thinking about the vision of Bukalapak, we want to help empower the SMEs through any kind of technology, be it in online, offline, through AI, IoT, blockchain, you name it. I recently got this interview where I was asked by this TV host live in TV station interview at the time, what is the best technology?
Oh, we're live too, by the way.
Okay, yeah. But I already prepared for this answer. At the time I was asked, what is the best technology, do you think? And I was like thinking a bit. And then my answer is that the best technology is not the type of technology. So the best technology is not like AI or IoT. The best technology, in my opinion, is one that can solve the problem in your market or context.
Thank you very much. Isn't that wonderful? So 20 million, I thought, in 18 months. No, joke.
So first of all, I think the impact of Mitra on the agents on Indonesia is colossal. And I think, with Mitra Toko, Warung Pintar, you guys, Grab Kiosk, all of it, it's amazing. And the scale of it's amazing. So I think it's an incredible initiative. I think for us, we're known as a payments company, but that's really not what we're aiming to do. Our big ambition is really around financial services. How do we stimulate the middle economy? So we hear Pak Jokowi talk about the MAC economy, the middle economy, affluent consumer, and lots of people here belong in that group, and how they're entrepreneurial and how they're thinking of disrupting and solving local problems and growing businesses. How do we give them the tools? Because to start a business in Indonesia today, if you're not in the top 10, 15% of the economy, is super tough. And that's why I have huge respect for companies like Bukalapak that have managed to do that. It's really, really tough. So how do we provide the right stimulus for people that want to become a micro-entrepreneur and a business entrepreneur? And then also, how do we provide the right support for the emerging middle economy? So there's really two things for me. One is this SME stimulus, which we all work together on this ecosystem to do. But there's also, we just got to accelerate financial inclusion. So initiatives, one of the initiatives we're building at the moment, we've talked about a little bit, is OVO Score.
OVO?
Score. Now, the reason I see this as really important is I always put things in the context of consumer. That when you think about the problem you're solving, if you sit in the seat of the consumer, then you often feel it firsthand. So I was told about somebody, a customer that tried to use OVO Pay Later and couldn't use it. So you imagine if that's for something that's critical. So you go, you need to borrow money, and OVO says no. Now, we talk about financial inclusion, but what does financial exclusion feel like? I'm a father of 2 kids. I can't imagine not having the ability to feed them, put a roof over their head, and to give them the medical care they need. Imagine if it was one of those things. There's nothing telling that person why they're excluded, or indeed how to be included. And so I think scoring is really critical, where you can say to somebody, hey, we know this about you. If you help us build more of a view, then we can help bring financial services to you. Whether they're from OVO or from a third party, to a degree, that's not the first care. The first care is if you need help and if you need support, there is a place to go and get it. There's a place for financial equality. And I think, I've often said that I think financial inclusion is it's a very nice phrase for people that don't want to talk about the impacts of poverty. But one of the things that I do is I go on the street and I learn about people and I see them, and this inequality is just horrendous. And so I think if we can build products like that, and if we can bring more and more people to serve Indonesia, then I think we can accelerate really improving people's lives. I mean, that's what we're talking about. We can,
wow,
these
thank you very
words,
much.
that's what it's about.
Wow, thank you. I would like to shift from that, because you're talking about moving from the 2% to the 98%. You're talking from moving from fighting to marathon. You're moving to think about totally new things. What does it mean for you as a person, as a leader going forward? These are huge changes. Please, in anywhere comfortable, could you share with us what it means for you, or how you look at this for you personally?
I think one thing is it's a bit related with the growth that I mentioned, that we still want the company to grow much bigger than now. Then again, as a leader, I have to be to follow that in terms of growing myself. So that is one. The second, I would also echo one of the statement that you mentioned before just now, that it's not a walled garden, that is an open ecosystem. One word I like is this word called co-opetition. Co-opetition means cooperation plus competitions, meaning that, look, going forward, the changes in digital is very, very fast. Everything changes so quickly. There is new technology coming every few months. There is new players coming every few months. We are not going to be able to do everything by ourselves. So it is a must for us, I think, if we also try to collaborate with a lot of people as possible, right? Including with OFO, including with other people, including with, let's say, ride-hailing companies, including with OTA and many others. For example, I was asked this question a lot. How do I think about Gojek or Grab? Are they competitors, or are they partners, or what, right? And my answer to them is they are everything. Because in one areas, for example, we are competing with Grab and Gojek in areas like digital goods. We are selling pulsa, we are selling bills, whatever. But at the same time, we are also partnering with them. Now, if you buy something in Bukalapak, you can have it delivered using Gojek or Grab, right? So it doesn't mean that once you become competitor with one party, then okay, we cannot talk about anything in regards to partnerships, right? And vice versa. So I think it's a good thing if we keep ourselves open in this space.
What is tough about keeping yourself open?
It's about ego, right? Because, for example, you know what? I compete with this guy. I don't want to work together with them. That's that ego, right? So I need to keep ourselves open that in talking to whoever it is, whether it's a company, whether it's a government, whether it's an NGO or whoever, there is always room that we can explore to collaborate, especially in this digital era.
Wow, thank you very much. Jason, for you, on the personal side, what you were so kind to share with us your guiding principles from your mother. Now, going forward to the future, with this huge changes coming, how do you think about it for you personally? And
yeah, I think one of the things I probably missed out on my mother, she was a really tough businesswoman, so it wasn't easy being around her. So I learned some traits. But I think as I go forward, just one comment on open ecosystem. I think there's one fundamental...
Slower, please.
Sorry. There's one fundamental principle in an open ecosystem that keeps you away. I love the honesty around ecocentricity, that if you are customer-centric, you will keep an open ecosystem and you will rise above co-opetition. The minute you lose that customer centricity, then ego overwhelms. And I thought that was a great statement. So I think for me, what does it mean personally going forward? It means I have to change my position in the company. The last 2 years have not been sustainable. I've regularly worked 18, 20 hours a day. I'm frequently in the gym at 6:15 in the morning. So I like to keep fit, I like to keep healthy. So I tend not to trade off what time I get up. So it's always what time I go to bed. So I'm normally less than 6 hours a night sleep. And I maintain that. I work on weekends, I interview on weekends. So it's a 7-day working week and it's often 18-hour days plus. And so the last 2 years are not sustainable. And so I need to think about how I build into a more sustainable role for myself. I need to think about the quality of leadership that I'm offering my team. And I need to think about how I'm building citizenship in my organization. So they're all things that we're working on now. As of yesterday, we had 907 people in OVO.
907?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a need to build citizenship. There's a need to build robust processes. There's a need for performance management. There's a need for better financial products and services. There's a need for better internal guidance. And so there's a whole wealth of work that we're undertaking at the moment, which is around scaling up the organization. The next thing in terms of leadership that has to change is I'm really focused on sustainability. So our path to profitability is in every meeting. So in every single planning meeting, be that a technical planning meeting, a business owner, whether it's in payments or financial services, everything is about path to profitability. The only way that we can serve Indonesia for the future is to become sustainable. So we're very, very focused, and there's lots of noise in the press about us at the moment, certainly not from us, and it's all very much overstated. But the reality is in Indonesia, all of the unicorns, all of the businesses have to have a path to profitability for sustainability. So really for the last 6 months, I've been heavily focused on changing our thinking from rapid growth to qualitative growth and sustainability. And so I think my leadership position is changing in the organization, and the quality of my leadership has to improve for the organization.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. That is special. I would like to build on this, and I might be asking the audience in a few minutes for some questions. The topic of gender has been coming up, and you two are hallmarks of highly respected organizations. And you talked about sustainability. Could you, and just want to assert, gender equality, 70% of the problem are 50% of the population, and that are the men. So gender equality would not be a problem if 50% of the people here, and I think will be 30% now because it's mostly women, would behave differently. Then women would also have more opportunity. Let me just assert that for a moment to give you time to think, because they were not prepared for this question. Any thoughts or perspectives on growth opportunities of business and gender equality?
So I think it actually has been proven scientifically, if I'm not mistaken, by the Carnegie Mellon University, that having gender activity is actually good for business. So before, when for example, companies with all men BODs, for example, versus a company who have better balance of women, it has actually been proven that when you have a better balance of women, you actually are able to perform better. So it's actually proven scientifically. So the thought about having men that you will be, perceived as more leadership quality and so on and so forth is actually just a myth. So it is not a problem that have been around because of the myth. So that's why in Bukalapak we try to encourage more women in the industry as well. Especially
you hear that?
In the,
that gets an applause. I think that's good. You should continue that.
Yeah. Especially in the tech sectors, like in engineers and everything, we see at the moment less women apply for that position compared to the men. That's why when we are, for example, do our employer branding, one of the things that we highlight is actually how we support this. Having some features in the office, from as simple as having a nursery room in the office, having longer maternity leave than what is required by the government, and so on, is just one example that we do to attract more these female talents to go into the space.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Jason.
So I think if you're a high integrity leader, you will naturally have male-female balance in your organization. I think if you hire as a meritocracy, you look at the person in front of you for experience, for fit for role and culture and values, your business will be balanced. So today, our business through applications, etc., is about 60-40, 60% being male, 40% being female. I would love to see it 50-50, if I'm honest, or 51-49, somewhere around there. But I think right now, the number of male applicants to female applicants, as you say, is slightly distorted. But I think fintech is also driving a new balance of gender equality in Indonesia as well. So, and even in leadership levels, we're a very balanced organization. So in the senior leadership and skip level, we have around 70 people, and it's pretty balanced. And I think it's important. So one of the advantages I've found over time, we always talk about leaders balancing their strengths and their weaknesses. One of the things I find, so recently Charlie, who was a partner at PwC, joined OVO as the CFO. Charlie has a lovely empathy about her. And so working with Charlie, she's a dedicated CFO. She knows her numbers and she's sharp. But one of the things Charlie does is in the leadership meeting, she balances out some of the male characteristics for more empathetic views. And so I think, sometimes, our legal secretary, our head of legal, Astrid, the same, brings different things in. And I think if you don't have that balance of male and female leadership, I think it's impossible not to be, as a strong male leadership organization can become very egotistical.
Well, thank you very much. I caught them off guard, so they deserve a little bit of applause right here. We have two amazing leaders here today, and they both have been very, very open. So I think I do want to ask you in the public, do you have any questions for them? They are married, so you don't have to ask them that question.
Okay. So have you ever been in a position that when you failed multiple times that you just keep asking yourself, maybe I'm not cut out for being an entrepreneur, and how you overcome that kind of thoughts?
Thank you very much. That's a great question. Both of you have the honor of answering that tough question. Please.
So the first time I did entrepreneurship journey was back in college. At the time, Zaki and some other friends were in the same dorms, where we have this quite large front yard, and we thought, why don't we develop something there? And then we developed this chicken noodle cart, mie ayam, and we tried to sell this. Fortunately, it ran for 1 month only. So after 1 month, it was a total failure, mainly because as a student, we sometimes have to do a lot of things, right? We need to have, I don't know, some exam and so on. So at one point of time, it was an evening, if I'm not mistaken, there was no one actually in charge of that card. So no one can actually buy from that because there is no one in charge of that. So from that, we actually learned that, you know, if you are having a business with your friends, then each of you has to have a clear role and responsibilities, right? And we took it for granted when we then started Bukalapak in 2010, again, me and Zaki and some other friends, that, okay, what's the role, right? So I think what is really important when you overcome failure is that you learn from that, right? So what is the problem? Why your business is failure? And you try to use that learnings when you try to start another business in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jason.
I think whether you're in a small business or a large business, there's certain principles that carry you through difficult times. So, you know, at the moment, we're going through growing pains. We need to grow faster, we need to be better, we need to be more employee-centric, we need to be more customer-centric. They're all good growing pains. If we're not growing, we don't have those pains. I think whether you're an entrepreneur in a business and you're having to be multifaceted, you know, the HR director, the CFO, the raising the funds, corp dev, etc. I think it's around breaking things down, prioritizing them, but I still think the biggest lesson in business is to decide what you're not going to do. And actually, sometimes that's okay. It's a trade-off. So you might not decide to fix processes, or you might not decide to improve your presentation. As long as you know where you're putting your energy and you're organizing you and yourself, your team around the problem, I think it becomes comprehensible. When I see people fail, is a lot of the time, failings are different. You know, a chasmic failure is often where there's just a lack of organization and prioritization, and then the business just has a struggle to communicate and it struggles to exist. I think when we have individual failings, there's a great phrase, you know, in every storm there's education, every storm is its own university. I love that. Every time I go into something that's really tough, I come out the other side and I feel like I've grown, I've improved, I've learned. OVO has just been through a long process of evaluation by BEI, and we are a better company for our audit with Central Bank.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Abid. I come from Bandung. So maybe this question is for Mas Fajrin. So it's lovely to hear that you are come from humble background, and I don't know, maybe most of the Indonesians people is come from nearly like your background too. So there's 2 points. First is how you deal with these humble backgrounds. I mean, when you grow your companies.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
That's the question. How do you deal with your humble background?
Okay,
Please
so,
answer the question.
Thank you.
No, that's a good question, man. Don't bring it down. Keep it up.
Yeah, I think I like the answer given by Mr. Handry Santiago in the previous session that, you know, at one point I am not, you know, Ivy League graduate, right? Because people sometimes ask where you graduate from, and I said that from Bandung. Some people might not know that. I mean, especially some foreigners. But then I thought to myself at the time, well, look, I was graduated here, and then perhaps I know the market better, right? Than people who have not been around here for many years. I know what exactly the SMEs are doing. I know how they look like. I know the problems better than them. So again, turn your weaknesses into the strengths, like Mr. Handry mentioned. So that is one. And the second, I think, being humble background also gives you an opportunity to become an underdog, right? Meaning that people don't really put a lot of expectation to you at first. So meaning that it's actually really okay if you fail. People don't really like care or something, right? So the downside is actually a very limited, but the upside is very, very high. When you success, then people will be like, oh, this person is really great, then this will be good for your business.
Thank you so much. Great, great question. One last question. Please, sir, here.
Hello, my name is Fajrin. In the past year, before that, congratulations for both of you became a unicorn in Indonesia. Last year, I think that if you are a unicorn, no one can beat you. But these past 2 months, I heard about Theranos and then now Go Work. Then I think how this can happen to unicorn who has a lot of money. I read about a lot of articles about that, but I want to know the perspective from you, both of you as a co-founder and as a director of the unicorn company.
So
how
what's the
do you
question?
think about these two?
What's the question?
The question is how a unicorn can step down, like Theranos who has a lot of money, and then Go Work who has a lot of money. Maybe some of people think that this because the founder.
The question is, I think I got your question. The question is, how are you going to win the next onslaught of big money competition hitting you, because Indonesia is the hottest market to be? Thank you for your question.
So maybe I'll take this one first. I think first of all, when we look at organizations like WeWork, etc., I think we have to learn from them and we have to think about sustainability. So in my lifetime, I've seen a number of economic downturns. One of them was known as the dot-com, which went boom and bust, which was the internet era. Now we're going through an application era, and I think there's another correction. And investors are now looking at revenue and real return. And so I think, as long as you run your business with a real ROI, with sustainability and a good business plan, I think you can sustain. But in terms of this new wave of investment potentially, one of the things, when I first came to Southeast Asia, and I've been very lucky, I've worked all over the world. I come to Southeast Asia and I was like, yeah, build a business, execute. Indonesia is one of the highest barriers to entry I've ever been in. And my biggest Achilles heel, my biggest thing that I can't fix is his biggest advantage. He's from Bandung and I'm not Indonesian. And the thing you have to do in Indonesia to succeed is localize, localize, localize. And so big companies come in here. You will not win Indonesian hearts and minds with money. I was describing to somebody the way you've got to think about a product in Indonesia. Who's got an iPhone? Right? When you open up an iPhone, right, it's great, isn't it? When you open up the new product, it's great. But if you were to open up an Indonesian iPhone, when you opened it, the box would be red and white. When you open the box, the internal lining would be the batik from your hometown, and you'd smell nasi goreng. That would be a great iPhone experience in Indonesia. You can't just enter Indonesia. The market is fragmented. The people are very localized. Even down to the way people think and the language they use and their traits locally is super localized. And I think building ecosystems and building understanding and supporting them, partnering with the people is critical. So I think the barrier to entry here is super high.
Now, Fajrin, you have to have a different explanation because you are from Bandung. So please, how are you going to win it?
So I guess that's why I always tell people who wanted to start a startup, don't try to achieve unicorn status, right? Instead, try to solve the problems. Try to serve your customers. Being unicorn is a bonus. It's a nice side effect thing. But if you choose unicorn as your main goal, I fear that you will want to achieve unicorn by all costs, by inflating your GMV, by inflating your transactions, by doing everything that you think can help you achieve unicorn status. The failure of Theranos and others like WeWork or something, maybe one of the reasons is because they tried to achieve that. I was also often asked, now that Bukalapak is unicorn, when Bukalapak will become decacorn? Do we have a target or something like that? And my answer to that is always, we don't have target for decacorn because what we want is actually to help empower more SMEs right? We want to empower more SMEs. If by doing that, then we achieve decacorn status, then it's a nice side thing. But if you are creating startups, the first thing you do is actually to have a great or big vision, big why on why you are starting this. If not, then again, you will face a lot of problems. Then when you don't have a lot of vision, when you don't have a big why, then it's easy for you to give up when you face a problem. But if you face a problem, then you remember that, look, I'm here actually to help empower SMEs. So if I give up now, what will gonna be happen to those SMEs, right? But if I continue doing this Bukalapak, hopefully there will be more SMEs, hopefully there will be more warungs that can be helped from Bukalapak. By having that, I believe you will have a bigger chance on winning in this competition.
Thank you very much. And here as we close, give them please a big hand. Thank you so much for enduring my awful question.